There's concern in the Northern Territory that the federal government's attempt to appease public anger over the treatment of Indigenous people in the justice system could end up being another hopeless target-setting exercise. The Commonwealth is preparing to ask all states and territories to set ambitious targets for reducing Indigenous incarceration rates.
As anger about Aboriginal deaths in custody widens to focus on the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in the justice system, the federal government's keen to be seen responding. It's planning to pressure the states to set targets for reducing Indigenous incarceration rates by more than 19% for juveniles and more than 5% for adults, something the Territory isn't committing to just yet.
We are acknowledging these issues and tackling these issues.
Indigenous and legal groups are worried targets themselves don't deliver results.
We see that with 12 Closing the Gap reports now, and every one of them a very disappointing failure.
These types of vague musings about targets, the current targets being reviewed, they're not overly helpful. They don't provide enough specifics about what exactly those targets are.
The Territory's Indigenous adult incarceration rate is the second highest in the nation. 85% of adults in prison and 95% of juveniles are Indigenous. The rates haven't reduced despite a change of government in the Territory and another Royal Commission suggesting a change from incarceration to rehabilitation.
I haven't seen enough change. We've been having these sorts of rallies for a long time.
Labor has defunded some rehabilitation programmes while establishing some new ones and delayed winding back mandatory sentencing.
It is not easy to overcome years, decades in some cases, of disadvantage.
Both the Territory Alliance and CLP are proposing more boot camps.
Young people will have an opportunity to gain meaningful skills and change their lives.
Indigenous and legal groups are disappointed that the same responses from politicians, which haven't delivered change yet, are still being pushed.
We had 1 million people on the streets over the weekend. It hasn't shifted the decision makers yet, but we need to keep growing on that.
Many are hoping responses which better address Indigenous constitutional rights, poor housing, health and education will result from continued public pressure. Jane Bardon, ABC News.